Now for evaluators, and again, we're going to talk next week about evaluators because, area and volume are kind of okay, but they're not the most interesting thing. I might be interested in what's the cost of this tower? What is the total amount of solar insolation I could collect on the tower? What percentage of the tower has favorable views of some interesting thing? We could come up with a lot of different evaluators, okay, but we're going to stay with these very simple ones for this week, okay? One, though, that we did want was just the floor area. And floor area, we use it a lot of things in real estate and construction just to approximate cost or approximate the value of things. We tend to like floor area. You think of that as being a good thing. So to get the floor area, since we don't have mass floors, we have to come up with a mathematical way of doing that. And the way we do that is to basically say that we have basically a series of numbers based on the floor-to-floor height. So in this case, 0, 10, 20, 30, kind of like you were doing with your mass floors, okay? We're gonna basically take a plane and just create a plane at each of those different levels, and then we're gonna intersect it, okay? So this is gonna create a bunch of curves that are the boundaries that go around the tower at each of those different levels. So we intersect it, then we can kind of join those, and finally make a surface out of them, okay? And then there's a whole series of surfaces. Every surface is essentially a mass floor. It's a floor that's kind of the area that's intersected by the outer boundary. Okay. And we add those all up to make the surface area. Super. So if we take all those and we just do a math sum of all those, you'll go ahead and get the total gross floor area. So essentially, what we've done now is we have a dynamo node that does everything that conceptual mass did for us. So although we liked our conceptual mass, it did some nice things for us. It turns out we found someone better, and it's time for us to move on to like someone who's a little more powerful and gives us more of a future. Okay, so that's how I want you to think about this. Conceptual masses are always a good way to start, but when you're going to start playing in the big leagues, it's often helpful to kind of be able to abstract it to this level. And you don't have to feel bad in that you can usually recreate what you're doing with that mass floor area kind of with this, okay? That same surface that's over here, that we've created up here, we can panelize that surface. We could put quad points all over it. We could put triangular, whatever we wanted to do it. We can work with that surface the same way we would work with it in Revit, and then ultimately place all the adaptive components on it. So we're not disadvantaged for having it this way. Okay, so far so good? Okay, so as you think about where we are now, which is creating all this G-tower form geometry, and really what we're doing this week in terms of these evaluators, what you're going to be doing next week is coming up with some new evaluators. So since you guys tend to be the ones who are sort of on the leading edge of getting the assignments done, and kind of you may have a little extra time on your hands this week relative to this class, be thinking ahead to, if you had these towers, what are a couple of other metrics you could define? Okay, that might be interesting for something that's interesting to you. If you're interested in building energy, think about things that are sort of heading in that direction. How do you measure a tower? What are the most interesting things from that? If you want to think about, surfaces that are available for like growing green surfaces, we could think about, things that have either favorable sun or sun within certain levels or thresholds. There's a lot of different things we can do. If you're more of a real estate person, we can come up with a kind of very interesting function that talks about the value of the property on the first level versus the value of the property on the second level. It could be just based on height or kind of orientation. It could be, a lot of different things you can get into. So be thinking ahead to that, because that's what you're doing next week, is kind of defining some of your own evaluators.